Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hi everyone and welcome to Your Forever Home, the podcast. We are now up to episode 19 in the Design Essentials season, which I'm very excited about. It's quite incredible, as I said last time, that we've got so many episodes just on kitchens. It's just amazing. So there will be 22 episodes in total, and we're today going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about lighting for your kitchen. It's quite a big thing, and more often, well, I won't say more often than not, but there is frequent times that I see plans for a kitchen and the lighting plan is basically just showing a whole heap of downlights. And it's not until I highlight to the client what the implications are going to be with just using downlights in the kitchen area in particular, let alone through the rest of the house. But I don't want this to be an entire episode on lighting throughout the home. I'm going to focus solely on the kitchen today, but it's so important not to just use downlights. In fact, avoid using downlights in your kitchen space. The reason for this, they create so much glare, they create so much shadow that the ability for them to perform as really good source of task lighting is minimal. And so today I'm going to talk about what the alternatives are, how can you use lighting in different ways for your kitchen, and how it's so important and why it's so important. You spend all this money on a kitchen, be it a renovation or a new build, and the last thing that you want is to be able to move back into that kitchen and the ability for you to cook and the ability for you to do what you need to do there is inhibited by the fact that the lighting is not what it needs to be. How many times have I walked into a kitchen and it is so dark in there that I wonder how they can possibly ever do what they need to do in that space? And I have clients say to me so often as well, when they are looking at renovating, oh, the lighting is so bad in here. The lighting is terrible. And it really affects your mood. It affects what you want to do in that space. And it actually affects your ability to be able to do what you want to do in that space. So today I'm going to be talking about lighting. There is nothing worse than a dimly lit kitchen. It makes it dark and dingy visually, but I think more importantly, it inhibits your ability to have a kitchen that is really functional. The lighting is such a key component to a kitchen being functional. And of course, we've talked already in previous episodes about the design element, not only aesthetically, but the functionality. But the lighting is such a key component to the overall functionality of your space. So one of the key components I'm going to start with is talking around task lighting. And task lighting is that ability for you to be able to perform your tasks. So task lighting is really critical in the kitchen as it is in a bathroom. So good artificial lighting is required regardless of what the natural light is available, but natural light is something that you really want to focus on in the design aspects. And we have talked about that in previous episodes, how you can get really good natural light into your kitchen in terms of the orientation of the kitchen and in terms of its layout, but also the orientation that is within the home, but also in terms of which orientation it's facing. So whether it's facing east or north. And there was a whole episode on the orientation and the layout. So that's going to give you really good natural light, which is fantastic when you're utilizing the kitchen during the day. But you also need to think of artificial lighting and how that can create a really good source of light when there's no natural light. So it's at nighttime. And, obviously we will be utilizing our kitchen at nighttime, particularly in the winter months when the natural light is not so great. So proper task lighting enables that work surfaces are going to be illuminated. So, for example, your island bench is not dark and dingy, that you can actually use that surface, but also your rear benches and so forth, so that they are illuminated, particularly when they're under overhead cupboards. That can create areas of dark pockets, and particularly in corners. You really need to be able to get some really good light in there. So I'm going to talk about how we can do that. So task lighting, is exactly that. It enables you to perform a task. And obviously in a kitchen, there's lots and lots of different things that we're doing. So we want to make sure that that task lighting is good. Now, to get additional daylight into your kitchen, you could look at skylights. I'm a big fan personally of Velux skylights because they can be openable, which means that hot air rises, and in heat, and particularly in our northern states, you can allow that hot air to be released. And they also auto close when it starts raining. Perfect. When you're out, you don't have to worry about the rain coming in. So the use of skylights or solar tubes are also a really good way to get natural light into your kitchen. And it just makes you feel better when you've got natural light coming in. So it is all about the feeling as well. And these downlights are not going to give it to you. I'll talk about downlights in a little moment in terms of how they can be used. But the other thing we need to think about in our kitchen, because they're in an open plan space, task lighting is critical. We need to perform a task. But the other thing we need to think about is ambient lighting, because kitchens are often placed in an open plan area where it's close to the lounge and it's close to our dining areas. And we don't necessarily in those spaces want to be flooded with task lighting. And so your kitchen is also an opportunity for you to put ambient lighting there. And also, because we're using those spaces as entertainment spaces, as a buffet space, as a place to sit there and use as a breakfast bar, we don't necessarily want to have that area flooded with task lighting. So the ambient lighting is really important, and we can do that with dimmers, but there's also different light sources that we can use to be able to create a really nice ambient mood and atmosphere in our kitchen. And the last one is decorative. And decorative lighting really comes into play because it's part of the interior design. So if you're thinking about pendant lights and the like, that is going to create a decorative element, which can also then perform as an ambient light as well. So I'll talk about that a little bit more too. So the key then is you've got a combination of task lighting, combined with ambient lighting / mood lighting, and then decorative lighting. And if you combine all of those three, then you have the ability, as I say quite frequently, to dial it up or dial it down. You've got the ability to be able to have a combination of light sources, and that enables you then to be able, depending on what's going on in that space, to be able to use the different light sources for whatever's required at that time. Now, I always say this around your entire home, that you need to have the combination of all three in any space so that you've got the ability to dial it up or dial it down as required. And a dimmer is really important on your light sources, but it's not the only thing that is going to be able to create that beautiful ambience when you need it to. It's not really sufficient. It's not a design piece per se. So in terms of downlights, so it's not as though I'm saying get rid of them altogether. I think what I'm saying is don't use them in isolation, and you need to get a really good downlight. Not all downlights are the same. And yes, I hear it a lot. Oh, but I've got some LED downlights. Yes, there's a lot of things to consider, and I'll get to who may be able to help you with this at the end. But you need to look at the beam. So what's their beam spectra? You need to look at their light temperature. There's a whole lot of different things to consider with lighting. So to keep this really simple, it's probably better to get a downlight that is that's recessed. Of course, it's LED. It's a really good quality. I'm a big advocate for bright green, but they've got a broad beam, which means that they're going to reach more, reach more in that space and create more of a more wider angle piece of light rather than it being really focused, which then minimizes the amount of shading you're going to have. So if you're using downlights in combination with other light sources, that's okay. You just need to be able to not rely solely on downlights, because they are not going to provide you with sufficient task lighting in your space. So get a good quality downlight, make sure it's got a wide beam, and then make sure that you're using it in combination with other light sources. Now, pendant lights are a fantastic thing to incorporate into your kitchen. Not only do they create another design element to your kitchen, they can really finish it off. They also, if they're placed over an island bench, in my mind, achieve all three: task, ambient, and decorative lighting. So they're decorative because they are creating they're a light fitting in themselves. They're a decorative element. They can finish your kitchen off. but they also create a mood, because if they're on a dimmer, you can put them on a low dimmer. You've got that decorative element, and that's a really beautiful ambience. You may just have those decorative pendant lights on over the island bench when you're sitting in your lounge room or you're sitting in your living room. It's a really soft light that can be illuminated into the space. However, if they're the right sort of pendant light, they can also then create really good task lighting over your island bench. And this is where you need to be quite conscious about the pendant lights that you're choosing, because they may not all be able to provide a really good task lighting source over the island bench. But if you choose it correctly, they can do all three, and what a bonus that is. So when you're looking at your pendant lights, make sure that if you are wanting them to provide an additional light source over the bench, that they're either open underneath. Have a look at how much light is being illuminated. If they're quite small and they're encased in something, it means that light is not going to easily illuminate over the bench top. So I generally then will choose something that is open at the bottom so that the light can get out and illuminate the bench top. So just be mindful of that. Make sure that they are on a dimmer so that you can, again, dial it up or dial it down. And you may have, for example, 2 or 3 lights over the island bench, depending on how big that island bench is. You may have one big, long lineal light, which is really awesome for creating a really good task light over the island bench. And again, on a dimmer, you can dial that down. Or you may choose to have a cluster of lights at one end, and that can look really beautiful, and it's a little bit different than having everything so symmetrical. But then you need to be mindful then that that's a decorative element at one end, and so you'll need to balance that at the other end of the island bench with some sort of task lighting. So there are so many different pendant lights to choose, and I think that is really where you can, add a little bit of your own personality and choose a light that works, that you really love, but you need to make sure that it's coordinated back to the cabinetry. So if you've got a lot of timber going on in your cabinetry, you'll need to be really mindful if you are then going to choose a timber accent or some sort of timber pendant light. It could clash. It could be timber overload. So just be really mindful. They do need to coordinate back with everything else. It needs to be regarded as a material that's being used in the kitchen. So think about that too. But look, I'm a big fan of pendants. I think that they add so much. And I just know in my own kitchen, I've had so many comments on our pendant lights. And funnily enough, I chose the pendants before I'd finished designing the kitchen, because I just loved them so much. And look, I'll never tire of them. You can't get them anymore, even though I've had so many people reach out to want them themselves. And so I just made sure that they were going to be able to work within the kitchen. It's probably not how I would traditionally suggest you would do it, but, I knew that I was going to be able to make them work. All right. So what are some of the alternatives to downlights? Now, you've got so many different choices. And the other great thing is there are so many amazing manufacturers in Australia. And for those of you who know me, know that I'm really big on supporting local manufacturers, things that are made in Australia. And of course, when I lived in the UK, I was also then big on supporting local UK designers and manufacturers. So think local, whoever's local to you, be that in your state, in your city, or even in your country. But, it's always good to support local. So from an Australian perspective, we have some incredible producers of light fittings. So decorative lights, so your pendants, but then also other sorts of lights as well. So let's look at some of the alternatives that you can put into your kitchen. So there's directional spots. So they will sit in the ceiling, just like a downlight will, but they've actually then got a piece that comes out and you can move it all around. The great thing about that is that they pivot so that you can turn them around, and some of them even bend, so that you can actually then get the light exactly where you need it. So as long as you've got enough of those around, once you move in, you can say, yep, I need light there, I need it pointing here, I need it pointing there. Fantastic. Then you've got track lighting, and that can be surface mounted on the ceiling, and you might have then a whole lot of spots or a whole lot of other different lights that are sitting off that track. Again, you can turn them, you can point them where you need them to be. I suppose the difference with those is Again, you've still got directional lights on either the track, but the pivot light directional spots are going to be actually sitting in the ceiling. So it's just a different look. LED strip lighting. So you've got LED strip lighting that can sit under your bench, which is really just a decorative element. It's not going to perform any sort of light source. It's more that ambient light. It's really nice, actually, if you are sitting in an open plan area and you've just got that light, that strip of light underneath your island bench. That's a really nice soft light to have on as an ambient light in that space. It's not going to do anything else. It purely is an ambient light. It may also illuminate some sort of feature that you may have on the front of your island bench. It can also then go under overhead cabinetry. So it's making sure that you've got light under your overhead cupboards that's sitting on that's illuminating the bench, and it's going to avoid dark corners. You may have it on the top of the cabinetry pointing up to the ceiling so that you've then got light reflecting off the ceiling. That's another way that looks really quite beautiful. But other LED strip lighting may be that it's an LED strip that's actually encased in a casing, and that would actually, rather than it being on a tape, and that would then be surface mounted or flush mounted with the ceiling, and that gives you a really beautiful architectural strip of light, and it really pushes out a phenomenal amount of light so that you're not in the dark. And because it's not splaying out anywhere, it just feels like a great light source. It really illuminates very, very well. So you could just have a combination of those. The other one is uplights. I'm a big fan of uplights. I love their simplicity. I love that they create some sort of decorative element. And they're another one that I feel almost sit in that pendant category in terms of providing awesome task lighting, really good ambient lighting because it's on a dimmer, and it can really, make sure that that's an ambient light source. And it's also sort of decorative. It's quite streamlined. You can get them in different styles, and particularly in homes with a really high ceiling of, say, 3 meters. They sit 600 millimeters down from the ceiling. They push light up, bounce it off the ceiling, and then splay that into the space. Just beautiful. I have them, and that's all I use in the kitchen. They're just so good. You need to get a good quality one. Then there's wall washers. They also sit in the ceiling like a downlight will, but instead of splaying light down, they actually point it to the wall, and then that light bounces off the wall and it almost creates a dome. So they're actually beautiful for highlighting artwork, but again, they can work really well in the kitchen depending on the design and where the ability is to bounce light off the wall. You don't want it bouncing off the cabinetry. Then you've got cove lighting, and that can actually sit above your cabinetry. And again, that's going to create a strip of light that then pushes light down into the space, and it just sits above the cabinetry, and it can be built into the bulkhead. Really, really lovely and sophisticated. Under cabinetry lighting, so if you're not going to have the strip LED, you can get smaller lights, circular or square, that sit actually in the cabinetry, the overhead cabinetry, and then they can put, pin lights or little spots that sit in there, little tiny little cabinetry lights that then push light out onto the bench tops if you didn't want to use LED under your overhead cabinetry. There's also, don't forget, the light that you're getting from your range hood. They generally are a really good light source, and they're obviously going to then illuminate your stovetop, which is fantastic, and you won't actually then need an additional light source over that range area. And then, of course, you've got pendant. So if you just picking 2 or 3 of these out of that list I've given you, and you may not even need to use any downlights, which would be ideal. Don't forget they're puckering your ceiling as well. So if you've got other things that are a little bit more streamlined, it means that your ceiling is less busy too. So there's lots and lots of different alternatives. I think people get a bit stuck sometimes. It's like, well, I just know downlights. The drafty or the architect's just put in downlights. What other choices do I have? I think that if you're in doubt, and you like I was saying earlier, you want to make sure that this area is going to work super hard for you, and you don't want to, do this renovation, spend, all these thousands of dollars, and then get in the lighting bad. It drives you crazy. So it's worth investing in getting your lighting designed for your kitchen. I would say the whole house. So you either engage a lighting designer or you engage an interior designer that is able to do a lighting plan for you. Not all interior designers do that. We do that. We do offer that as a service. or you can engage a lighting designer, and just make sure then that space is designed for you with a really good selection of different light sources so that you know it's going to perform for you. And again, you've got task lighting, you've got your decorative element, and then you've also got that ambient and mood lighting. Thinking about that you may actually have, as an example, just your pendants on when you're watching the TV. And that's if these spaces are all interlinked. Or you may just have the strip light under the island bench on when you're watching TV. So that's really creating that ambient lighting. But invest in getting the lighting properly designed. It's only when you live with a really poor light that you understand the value of having really good light, but also that it adds to the overall feeling of your home. It adds to that overall design aspect of your home by having, alternative light sources than just downlights. It is an absolute game changer in how your house feels, how your house performs, and how your house looks. And I've actually had quite a few clients that were not convinced that a lighting design is what they needed. And it's only when the house was finished, they said, oh my goodness me, what a difference it makes. And I think you need to live in and experience that to know the value. So I suppose at this point, you'll have to take my word for it. Unless you're living in really poor lighting, you say, I have to deal with this. So deal with it, invest in good lighting. Please avoid spending thousands of dollars doing this renovation and then ending up with really poor lighting, because it's going to be difficult to retrofit and there'll be compromises. So I hope that today, I trust that today, I need to stop saying hope, I need to say trust, that has, really given you some insight into the alternatives, that there are other things that you can use, other light fittings and sources that you can use apart from downlights. It'll absolutely finish your kitchen off beautifully, and it'll enable you to be able to work in there absolutely fabulously. So as always, check in with us. We've got the kitchen design, the beautiful kitchen design made easy kitchen online course that's available for $99. Refer to the website at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au. We've also got the kitchen design sanity check. If you're after a little bit of assistance and want another professional set of eyes to go over your kitchen design, we can do that for you, of course. And then our material selections to just make your kitchen absolutely exactly as you want it. We can help you with that too. Lots and lots of resources on the website in terms of articles about internal elevations and, how your kitchen design needs to be a reflection of you. Lots of resources on the website. So don't forget to go there too under the tab resources. All right. I will see you here next week where I'll be talking about all important budget and how do you budget and keep yourself on track for your for budgeting for your kitchen. As always, I'll be here next week, next Thursday, and Tuesday, 12:30 on Instagram Live. See you then. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.